This is availability check part 2, which is the configuration. Part 1 that you already have deals with the theory. So what is availability check? Where are different replenishment lead times set? How does the system compute the availability of a product, its date, etc., is all discussed in part 1. Whatever we discuss in part 1 is only master data. For example, a particular product is not available on Jan 10. So how can the system promise it on January 20th? Apart from other scheduling lead times like transportation lead time, loading time, blah, 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 one of the main lead times is the availability check lead time, or it's called available to promise time. And that is set per plant, per material in the material master. Okay? And where it is set, in which view it is set, what different kinds of replenishment lead times are available based on how the product is either procured or produced is discussed in part 1. Now in part 2, we are going to discuss the configuration, the SDRO things that we are going to do. So, first thing, where is availability check done? What are the different places in the sales order cycle that availability check is done? There are 3 places in which availability check is done. This is a very important interview question. If somebody asks you about availability check, they'll definitely ask you, what are the different places in the order to cash cycle that the availability check is done? First is sales order, second is delivery, third is PGA. 3 places. I've seen somebody explain that availability check is done in 5 places, 6 places. No. Availability check is only done in 3 places. Sales order, delivery, PGA. In sales order, availability check can be triggered in a variety of cases. First of all, let's go and see a sample case. So you go to BA01, create an order, and pick a material, say M01, and let's see how availability check works. $200 quantity, right? Okay. Now, from this screen, can you tell whether the order line item 100 is back ordered or not? Can you? This line would have been back ordered if the schedule line is checked off. That means if multiple schedule lines exist, this line, this check mark will be checked on. So you can select this item and click on schedule lines, and you see that the entire quantity is confirmed. If not, then another schedule line would exist where whatever quantity that could not be confirmed will be confirmed for a later date. That's called existing of multiple schedule lines, and you can find out by this check mark. Okay. As of now, the quantity is available. Now, did availability check get triggered already? Yes. As soon as you enter the line item, if the schedule line is relevant for availability check, it will automatically be triggered. Okay. If you want to check availability again, anytime you change the quantity, for example, you change it to 210, availability check is triggered again. But it just happens in the background. That's it. Okay. Anytime you change the quantity, availability check is triggered. Number two, anytime you change the plan, like this, availability check is triggered. Okay. In this case, this plant does not seem to work because of some config issues. But anytime you change the plant, availability check is triggered. Okay. Now, can you, without doing any of these, like changing this or any of that, can you trigger availability check manually without changing quantity or plant or any of that stuff? Yes. Select the line item and click on this button, the first one, the seventh button. Okay, this will trigger availability check. Now, sometimes you might want to just view the availability check but not actually do an availability check. That can be done by the 8th button, the one next to availability check button with the glasses symbol. It's just viewing the availability check for that line item. Okay. So this is the situation for M01 for this plan, and the total cumulative ATP quantity is 97,925. That means that much quantity is available as of now for the promise to the customer. Okay. That's how you do availability check. View availability check, sorry. And if you want to do availability check, this is the way you do it. You click on this and then the system will do availability check. If the system could not find enough stock, then it will show you a different screen. For example, let's see if it triggers availability check. I think this line item might be set up in a different way. I'm not sure if CN is relevant for MRP. Let me quickly check. Is CN relevant for MRP? CN. Sorry, not MRP, availability check. CCN is not relevant for availability check. In this case, no availability check is done. So if it were CT, system would have done availability check. Okay? If this were CT, the system would have done an availability check. But somebody has changed the schedule and determination for this line item, or somebody might have changed the MRP type for M01. Okay? Now let's go. I want availability check to be triggered for that material. So how do I do that? We know how schedule and category is triggered, right? It's based on MRP type, and what else is it based on? ND. Somebody has set it to ND. If you would have set it to PD, save it, then CP would have been determined. Okay, you know schedule and category determination, right? No confusion there. Okay, select that, go to schedule lines, so it is CP. I hope nobody has touched CP and switched off availability check and whatnot. Oh my God. Somebody switch off availability check for CP also. It is switched on. I'm just wondering why availability check is not turned on at this point. On quantity. So this is how the availability check screen comes up, right? So this is the availability check screen. If enough stock is not available, the stock would have been confirmed for a later point. So what is available, what is not available? It will be split up into two lines. Okay. Now here you can also check whether stock is available. If, for example, if you have two plants, let's say one in San Francisco and the other in Los Angeles. If you do not have stock in the San Francisco plant, let's say you're creating an order for a San Francisco-based customer, but you have stock in LA plant, the system will not automatically switch to the LA plant. Okay? So you have to go to other plant and you can explicitly check the availability on that plant. Okay? By doing like that. Okay? If the stock is available in that plant, you can change the plant at the line item level. Okay? That is doing availability check across multiple plants. Okay? So the system is doing that at this point. When the stock is available, it will let you know whether stock is available in the plant or not. Okay? So that is availability check at the sales order level. Now, availability check can be done at the delivery level also, or can be done at the PGA level also. So the way delivery availability check is done at the sales order level versus the delivery level versus the PGA level is going to be different. How it's going to be different, or how it should be different. These are your prime pieces for availability check configuration. First 4 items: checking group, checking rule, schedule and category, and delivery item category. Checking group, checking rule, schedule and category, delivery item category. These are your configuration elements. So what is checking group? Checking group is a feed in the sales general plan view of the material master that dictates how requirements are transferred to MRP. For example, for certain materials, requirements are transferred to MRP in a group fashion at the end of the day. I'll give you an example. So there are orders coming in, order 1, M01, for a particular material. Okay, order 2, M01, the quantity is 10, quantity is 20, quantity is 30, quantity is 10, 15, so on and so forth. In some cases, requirements need to be transferred to MRP right away for that particular order. Okay, 10, one entry in 10, 20, one entry in MRP for 20, so on and so forth. But for general consumables, sometimes it is okay to club all the requirements together at the end of the day and say 10 plus 20, 30, 30 plus 30, 60, 60 plus 10, 70, plus 5, 15. 85 is the total requirement and you can transfer it to MRP. Okay? Now, the relevance of this for availability is nada, zero, nothing. But this parameter affects your availability check. Okay, and that parameter is called checking group. And on the screen, it is visible to you as availability check in the sales general plan data. So this is one parameter. Now, the second parameter is checking rule. Checking rule defines how availability check needs to be done. Checking rule defines how availability check needs to be done. So if you go to SPRO, IMG, I'll show you the path just in case. /n SPRO, IMG, sales and distribution, basic functions, and then availability check and transfer of requirements. Go to availability check and then check the availability check with ATP logic. Okay, this is your regular availability check. There are other modes of doing availability check like product allocation, rule-based availability check, so on and so forth. But we are not going to discuss that. It's beyond the scope of SD. Product allocation means although goods are available in your warehouse as ATP stock, sometimes you might not give it to the customer. Why? Maybe because there is a shortfall and he only allocates a certain amount of stock to a certain set of customers. That is called product allocation. Example is the apparel industry. In the apparel industry, as soon as stock is available, you'll not give it out to companies like Nordstrom or Macy's or whatever. These are the retailers, right? Foot Locker. Depending on availability and depending on the customer, only a certain amount of product that is requested is allocated. That's the nature of that business. And another example could be some hot products like an Apple's iPad that is just released. It will always be allocated based on the customer. So not all customers will receive as much stock as they want. Example, if you take Best Buy, which is a big customer, they'll get a good amount of stock. But if you take some online store, if you open an online store and you request for some iPad stock, you might not get it. You don't have enough history. So although stock is available, your order will be back ordered and they'll be allocating you certain product based on the availability. That's called product allocation. We are not going to discuss that as part of availability check because you can safely say that you have not worked on product allocation scenario. So this is where checking groups are defined and this is where checking rule is defined. Okay. Now let's go back to that PowerPoint. For a particular availability checking group, 01, let's say, okay? 01 means daily requirements that is set on the material master. For that checking group, you can specify how the system takes into account the different stock types when doing availability check at the order level versus when doing availability check at the delivery level or the consignment level or any of these, make to order stock level, so on and so forth. But we are only interested in two things mainly, order, delivery.
Shiva, this is Raminder here. What sort of availability check is performed on back order then? Is it same thing as SD or is something else? Because like you in the initial example you said like you made an order for 200 and 150 are available. You straight away create the you on the delivery of like January 10th for them. But what about the 50 which you are confirming for 20th? How are we checking for those next 50 in that back order?
Back order, what is back order? Is it different from a sales order? Or is it the same as a sales order?
Is the same as a sales
Back
order?
So same principles as sales order availability check applies to items that have been back ordered. No difference. Same principles that apply for a sales order availability check apply to back ordered sales orders availability check also. This back order is not a different transaction. A back order is a sales order for which the requested date by the customer could not be fulfilled and hence it has been pushed to a different date. That's a back order. It's not a different type of order, right? It's a sales order.
Yeah, but then are we checking, because we can't be checking for ATP in back order, isn't it? It has to be some other check other than ATP.
No. Why other than ATP?
Because ATP was, we checked against it and that's why we confirmed.
So there is a there is an order M01 line item 10 quantity 200 150 is available. So I said this will create two schedule lines. One schedule line for 150 on, let's say, a date that the customer has requested, and another 50 for a future date whenever goods are available based on the replenishment lead time of that material. That means, that material takes 5 days or 6 days to procure. So I'll push it to a date where I can procure them and put them in the warehouse, keep it ready, and then ship it out. And by that time, it will be January 15th. That's what the system has determined. So in this case, this order is called back order or partially back order. But nevertheless, it's a sales order. Availability check is already done, and the system has determined that 50 can only be delivered on January 15th. Availability check is done. Now, coming back to your question, can you point out where your question is exactly in this case?
No, so because when we said, okay, this order has to be back ordered, we performed an availability check. We said, okay, with 200 we cannot deliver. We have an ATP of 150, so 150 confirmed January 10th.
Very good.
That check for 150 happened based on ATP.
Yes.
Now, check for 50 on January 15th happened against what?
Against what? There is no stock. So how did the system confirm the quantity of 50? Is that your question?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. You don't have the stock, but you will have stock at a point in time in the future, isn't it?
That's correct.
Right? And when will you have, what time will you have it in the future? You don't know. It's available in the material master's replenishment lead time. So go through that availability check part 1 video. That one talks about the replenishment lead time for a material. For example, this material is externally procured. So how is this RLT computed? So the people dealing with the procurement of that material will know that if required, this material will take 5 days to procure, 1 day to do the goods receipt, and maybe half a day to unpack, so on and so forth. So total put together 6 days or 7 days it will take for us to get the material available to our location, to our plant. This will be set in the replenishment lead time as in the material master as an RLT, replenishment lead time. So the system says, let's say today is January 7th or 6th. So 150 is available. So on January 6th, because 150 is available and it takes 4 days to pick, pack, BGI, load, and then transport it to the customer's location, it adds 4 days and then says by January 10th, I can give this. from January 6th, it will take, let's say, 4 days for picking, packing, PGI, blah, 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 for the remaining 50, but we don't have the goods available. So it will take 6 days for us to get the goods available. So Jan 6th plus 6 days. How much is it? 12, let's say. Plus 4 days. 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th. So on Jan 16th, I can get the remaining 50. That's what the system is saying. Do you understand it now?
Yeah, I understand. So basically, availability check is not performed against a schedule line. It's performed against a complete item level, not against a schedule.
Not against the schedule line. The schedule line has been determined based on availability check. See, why did the system split it into two? Because the system has determined that there is only 150 available. And then it has split it into two.
Yeah, fair. I understand.
Okay. Alright, going back to our checking rule. So checking group is one of the parameters that's used in availability check, which is set at the material master level. Okay? The second is checking rule. The checking rule specifies how stock is computed. Now, in a real project, you will have very minimal requirement to change these settings. Very minimal, meaning in my years of experience, I have never changed it. But nevertheless, we should understand what a checking rule is. So, what is a checking rule? A checking rule is the configuration in availability check where you can configure what type of stock is included and what type of inward and outward movements are included. Example, when doing availability check, do you need to include safety stock? Safety stock means, say if you have a quantity of 10,000 stock available for a particular material, 500 will be kept as safety stock, meaning only for urgent requirements. Right? The President Obama has asked you for some stock. Yes, sir, we have it. But we will not give it to every Tom, Dick and Harry. Stock in transfer. Transfer of stock between one plant and another. See, there is a plant in Los Angeles and a plant in San Francisco. Some intra-company stock transfer has been initiated because there is a shortage of stock in San Francisco plant. So an intra-company stock transfer has been initiated from the Los Angeles plant to the San Francisco plant. But it is still in Bakersfield, which is in the middle of San Francisco and Los Angeles. Do we need to consider that when you need to do availability check? Include quality on inspection stock. Quality stock means sometimes every product generally physical deliverable needs to be quality approved. Right? Generally. And can that be included? Because if you have 100 quality stock, maybe only 90 comes out. Do we need to include that? Or do we need to only see that after quality has been passed and it has been put in unrestricted use, only use it? Include block stock. Stock can be blocked for a variety of reasons. Maybe you want to, do a double quality check, or you want to block some stock for a different customer because it's an important customer. So these are the different stock types. Which stock to include and which stock to not include. The default setting for sales order availability check is do not include any of these. These are called stock types. It's the same material, but same material, safety stock, same material, stock in transfer, quality stock, block stock, restricted use stock, so on and so forth. Generally, the only stock that is considered in sales orders availability check is unrestricted use stock, which means stock that is readily available for us to ship to the customer. Okay. The next thing is inward and outward movements. In case, for example, when we are procuring materials, we need to include purchase orders. That means we don't have certain stock available. In this case, the 200 quantity that we have been discussing. Only 150 is available, 50 is not available. If we had issued a purchase order 10 days ago and that stock is going to come through in 3 days, then it essentially means that we are going to have stock in 3 days. So we can, if the customer has asked for goods beyond 3 days, then we can as well say that we have the goods available because we have already placed a purchase order and it's going to come in 3 days. Whether we need to include purchase orders or not. That is the check mark. Include reservations, include sales requirements, include deliveries, blah, blah, blah. Again, these settings rarely need to be changed. If anybody asks you in an interview or a checking rule, you can safely say that I have never done any changes in the checking rules for standard checking rules, say order A or B delivery. Okay, because there is rarely a need to change things. But you should at least be able to explain the different stock types. So what is a checking rule? A checking rule is an inbuilt parameter. See, you cannot change it, meaning A is sales order, I said, B is delivery. Can you create your own? Like A for order type OR and B for order type cashier? No, you cannot. These are inbuilt and they cannot be changed, they cannot be created. You may change the configuration behind A or B, but you cannot create C or D or E or F. These are inbuilt. That's number one. And number two, a checking rule controls what kind of stock is included and what kind of inward and outward movements are included when doing availability check. You can give some examples like safety stock, stock in transfer, inspection stock, blocker stock, or purchase orders. If you give these examples, that is more than enough. When you discuss checking group. Okay? So 2 parameters, checking group, checking rule to summarize. Checking group is at the material master level. In the sales general plan data. A checking group, along with the checking rule, see, checking group is 0, 1, along with checking rule A, is going to define how availability check is done, what stock is included, what kind of inward and movement, outward movements are included, so on and so forth. That will define your availability check for that line item. For example, line item 1 could be M01, for which the checking group is 01, and line item 20 could be M02, for which the checking group could be 02. So 01 checking group's availability check could be different, and line item 20's availability check could be different because of a different checking group or a different checking group. Okay? The third important parameter is the schedule line category. Like I said, at the schedule line category, you can switch your availability check on or switch it off. And that is controlled using this flag. We have already discussed this when we talked about schedule line category. Right? So this is the third important parameter, schedule line category. The next parameter is the delivery item category. Now I told you availability check can be done at 3 levels: order level, delivery level, PGA level. Now at the order level, your schedule line is controlled using schedule line category. At the delivery level, your ATP is controlled using delivery item category. So you can check it off or check it on. Okay? Blank means check availability. X means do not check availability. Okay? I have very rarely seen cases where availability check is done at the PGA level. It's more or less like a fail-safe, nothing more than that. Okay? Even availability check at delivery level is also rare. If you want, you can enable it. If you don't want, you can disable it. Okay? But the major controls are at the order level, where you have checking rule, blah, blah, blah. Okay, but one more thing, I take back my word on availability check on delivery. Availability check at delivery is done. Availability check at PGI is something that I have never seen being done. Okay, if there is a stock shortage though, system will automatically notify you. It's a very bare minimum availability check, meaning whether stock is not available, it will not be able to do a PGA. Okay, that check is there, but there is no fine-grained control over it. All fine-grained controls are at the order level or at the delivery level. Okay, where you can define your stock checking rule, checking group, and for that checking rule, you can define what stock needs to be included, blah, blah, blah. Okay, 4 parameters, once again, just to summarize, there are 4 parameters that are used in the configuration of availability check. The first one is checking group, which is set at the sales general plant data of the material master. Checking rule. Checking rule is defined by transaction. Example, A is for sales order, B is for delivery. That's it. You cannot change it, you cannot create more. So for a particular checking group, for a particular checking rule, you can define what stock needs to be included, what stock should not be included, what kind of movements needs to be included, what kind of movement should not be included. That is the first piece of configuration. More fine-grained controls are available at the schedule and category level and delivery category level, but that kind of controls is only available, only limited to whether you can do availability check or not do availability check. That's about it. So inside of the checking group and checking rule, you can switch off availability check at the schedule line level. For example, CN does not have availability check. CP has availability check. Similarly, at the delivery item category level, you can switch availability check off or you can switch availability check on. These are the 4 major parameters that you can use to control availability check. Okay? Now, configuration is easy. Availability check configuration is very easy. Just 4 parameters: checking group, checking rule, know their sources, and fine-grained controls at schedule and category level and delivery item category level. Simple. Now let's look at a couple of scenarios, something that you can explain in the interview maybe. Okay? So, scenario 1. So here is a requirement. Availability check happens after credit release in sales document. What is credit release? If an order goes on a credit block, the order is blocked. Nothing else can happen on that. No deliveries can happen. Now, somebody explicitly went to V, K, and 3 and released the order. Now, availability check is triggered again. Okay? Now, if rescheduling runs once a day, inventory will be allocated against a newer order than the one that has just been released. Now, let me explain this more graphically. This is a problem that I have faced in one of my previous projects. See, what is rescheduling? See, rescheduling is coming into the picture, so make sure you go through it after the class if you have not gone through it. What is rescheduling? There is order 1. For the same material, let's say, M01, quantity 100. Order 2, M02, quantity 200. What is the stock that is available? Let's say 250. So this is confirmed. This is partially confirmed. 50 is for a later date. Okay. Now order 3 is there, M01, for a quantity 200. All of this will be back ordered. Now, every night, generally, a program called rescheduling will be run. What does rescheduling do? Rescheduling makes sure that if new stock is available, let's say overnight some new stock has come, the truck has arrived, and the stock has been replenished, some 250 has been added. Okay. Now, this order would remain the same until rescheduling is done, or somebody goes into the order and does availability check again. So the 200 will remain back ordered. Now, if rescheduling is not done, and tomorrow, okay, order 4 tomorrow. Order 4 is there for M01 for a quantity of 100. This will be confirmed because there is an additional stock, but this will still remain back ordered. But that's not fair, right? This is an order that came in yesterday. So this has to be given preference over today's order or tomorrow's order. So that's why rescheduling done, so that rescheduling opens every order that based on the input parameters. For example, do you want to consider only today's orders? Then yes, open all today's orders and make sure that, okay, how much is back ordered? 50. Do we have extra stock available? Yes, something has come in. So, okay, allocate it. Allocate 50. So this becomes 200 now. And now 200, there is another order that is back ordered for 200. There is 200 available. Allocate it here. And tomorrow, if another order comes in, that will remain back ordered. Okay, rescheduling is a nightly program that runs to make sure that any orders that are back ordered, if enough stock is available, new stock has come in, the new stock will be allocated to the back ordered schedule line. This is rescheduling. Now, coming back to our problem. The problem statement says, if rescheduling runs once a day, inventory will be allocated against a new order that has just been released from credit hold, while older orders not on credit hold will be backed up. Okay. So let's say this particular order is back ordered, right? Because of this 50. And sorry, it's on credit hold. When the order is on credit hold, availability check will not be confirmed, because if our customer did not pay, we should not want to confirm that order. Okay. Now, let's say we have explicitly released this order. We have explicitly released this order saying, yes, go to VKM3, and we have enough reasons that this order needs to go through. He's a good customer, long-standing customer. So let's release this order. Okay. Now, when you release this order, the availability check will happen again. Okay. Availability check will happen again. And if availability check happens, the system will see what is the stock available. Maybe extra stock is available. It will allocate it to this order. Okay. Now, there might have been other orders that have come here that are back ordered. They are not on credit hold. They are back ordered. Yesterday, previous day, so on and so forth. Or even today's orders. So when credit hold happens, when credit hold is released explicitly, availability check is automatically triggered. That is the SAP default functionality. But in this case, what happens is, when availability check happens again, anything that is back ordered, if stock is available, will get fulfilled, and other back orders that deserve a chance to be fulfilled will not be done until rescheduling is done. So that is the problem. It's a matter of timing between when credit hold is released for an order versus when rescheduling runs. Okay? So certain orders will get preferential treatment because they were on credit hold and they are released, and for all orders that are released from credit hold, the availability check happens by default, automatically. So what is the solution? So the solution here is, using this user exit, there is a piece of code that has to be written, which will be called once for every line item after a credit release. Okay, the default functionality is to do ATP check for all non-confirmed items. However, this can be disabled by explicitly returning ch_check equal to 8 equal to no. So what we are essentially trying to say in this mumbo jumbo is, for all orders that are released on credit hold, do not do availability check. So default functionality is to do availability check after a credit release. But because of that, some older orders that deserve a chance are not given a chance, and this order is taking that stock, the order that is on credit hold that has just been released. So what we are doing here is go to user exit, and we are writing a piece of code that says if credit check is, in this case, if credit hold is being released, return ch_check equal to 8, which means that availability check should not be done after a credit hold. So this is the requirement, and what you have done here is a gap analysis, and you are proposing a solution. Okay. Now, this particular piece called user exit, what is returned and what is not, is something that you don't need to worry about at this point. Okay. So when we come to user exits, I'll explain what a user exit is, how we need to return some values, what kind of code can be written there, so on and so forth. But focus on how I'm explaining a scenario and what kind of gap analysis am I doing and proposal of a solution. This is how every problem statement is. So there will be a requirement. For every requirement, you have to do a gap analysis. What is the gap analysis that we have done here? See, this is the scenario. Okay, well and good. The gap analysis is the standard functionality is to do availability check after a credit release. That's the standard functionality. What can I do? In order to change the functionality, customization would have to be done, not to do availability check after a credit release for a specific conditions. And that facility is available in SAP using user exits. Okay, so the solution is proposed here where you go to a particular user exit, write a particular piece of code under a certain set of conditions to not do availability check. As simple as that. Okay, so every requirement has to be, this is how a requirement will be formalized, and formal gap analysis will be done as to, what is the requirement, why this requirement could not be done using standard configuration, what kind of customization have to be done, and then the solution will describe the actual customization in detail. Okay?
Will this be done on line item level?
Yes. This user exit will be triggered for every line item.
So the line item level, you go and check, do not check availability.
Do not check availability
on the line item level.
Yes, at the line item level. So this user exit will be called once for every line item after credit release. So you go to that user exit, and every time that this user exit is called, return ch_check equal to 8 if no check needs to be done.
So you were just discussing the rule.
Rami, here, suppose there are no back orders at all. So there is no previous pending back orders. Even then, if we don't perform the availability check, won't we be denying this order?
No, anyway, rescheduling will run, right? When rescheduling will run, it will give everything a fair chance.
Yeah, rescheduling runs at night. But like suppose we are saying, okay, don't run availability check, and suppose there were no back orders, then it will only be by the next day that this order would be confirmed.
Correct. If you don't want that to happen, after a credit check has been after an order has been released for credit, this will run and it will not confirm back any line items that have been back ordered. Save it, open the order again and do an ATP check again. Now this is no longer a case where ATP is done after a credit release. If you want to explicitly do it, open the order again, do a ATP check and then save it.
Yeah.
Okay. That is scenario 1. Scenario 2 is ATP in multiple plans. See, the requirement is ATP check has to be done for the San Francisco plan as well as the Los Angeles plan for line items belonging to certain material groups. Let's say we are a retail company and we want to do availability check for, let's say, if we are doing for a certain class of products, let's say ice creams or flowers or whatever, right? When we are doing availability check, only for a certain class of products or a group of products. We want to do availability check in both the plants. How do we do that? Okay, gap analysis. So the standard functionality in SAP, first you have to find out what is the standard functionality. Can it be done using standard functionality? You have to do some research on that. The standard functionality in SAP is to do ATP check for the plant that has been determined based on the standard delivering plant determination. As soon as you enter the line item, a delivering plant will be determined. How is the delivering plant determined? First preference comes from the material master. Second preference comes from the customer master. Third preference comes from the customer material info record. So based on these items, plant determination, some plant will be determined and that will be the scope of check for ATP by default. However, if more than one plant needs to be checked, then you can do a manual check like I've told you. So go to that line item, do a manual ATP check, click on other plants, and if there are more than one plants, you can explicitly check them all. And say, okay, do the availability check on this plant, do the availability check on this plant. However, there is no standard configuration available in SAP to configure the list of plants based on which availability check can be done. So our requirement is for a particular group of products, let's say group equal to 01, material group equal to 01, check plant LAX and SFO. Can that be done automatically? So in the gap analysis, we have determined that there is no way of doing it using standard configuration. You can manually do it, but no way of automating it. So what is the solution? The solution is to use a particular user exit where you can specify the list of plants based on which availability check needs to be done if the material group belongs to so and so. If the material group is 001, then add multiple rules to the plant structure where you specify, okay, plant is this, plant is this, plant is this. Your other consultant will do it for you. You don't have to worry. You can just need to specify the user exit and specify what plants and what material groups, and he will do the rest of the things. Okay? So when we talk about availability check, once again, summarize. What are the different places where availability check can be done? Number two, what are the basic pieces of configuration that controls how availability check can be done with 4 different configuration items? Right? Talk about checking group, where it is configured. Talk about checking rule, how it is configured. Can you create more checking rules? No. The standard checking rules are A and B. A for order, B for delivery. And explain about the scope of check in a checking rule. What stock types need to be included, whether inward and outward movements need to be included for purchase orders, purchase requisitions, so on and so forth. That is configured in a checking rule. The next is schedule and category. Whether an item, whether for a particular item you need to do availability check or not, is controlled at the schedule line level. If you switch off, then irrespective of what checking rule you have, what checking group you have, so this line item's availability check is not done. Okay? The 4th parameter is the delivery item category, which controls availability check at the delivery level. You can switch it off or switch it on. And like I said, irrespective of what checking group and what checking rule you have, your availability check can be switched off or switched on at the delivery item category level. That's the only piece of configuration. Beyond that, explain a couple of scenarios like I've explained here. One is regarding the credit check and re-triggering of availability check after a credit release and how to explicitly not do it. The second thing is how to do automatic availability check on a list of plants based on any criteria you want, material group, division, distribution channel, whatnot, anything. How to do it automatically. Explain these 2 scenarios. That's more than enough when you explain availability check to anybody in an interview. Any questions?
Any product example you can say where you going to turn off the availability check on the schedule line level or delivery item level?
Any product example.
Why would you turn it off?
Service, right?
Okay. Okay. Then you turn off the
Or MTO, take MTO. Do you want availability check? No, right? Make to orders.
Okay.
Or fixed capacity plans. These are all scenarios where you don't need to do availability check. You can turn it off. Now, there are two ways in which you can turn it off. One could be at the material level using the checking group. You can specify a checking group that does not have a configuration scope of check. The second thing is, for that material, in a particular business transaction or business process, if you want to do availability check and not in a different process. For example, in rush order, you don't want to do availability check, but in a regular order, you want to do availability check. How do you do that? That can only be done using schedule and category, because same material, same sales order. So the rules for availability check would remain the same. The only difference in both these cases would be a schedule and category. So you can use the schedule and category to control whether availability check should be done or not be done for that particular transaction. Does it make sense? Hello?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, guys? All right, we'll stop.